To be hollow is to be without a real significance or value, and Dark Souls really encapsulates this feeling throughout the entire trilogy. After all, the whole philosophy of the game is that you're pathetic and worthless in this universe, but you can still make a change, right? You can still conquer these seemingly unconquerable gods. But Dark Souls 2 has quite the interesting twist on this. Sure, much like in Dark Souls 1 and 3, you defeat impossible odds and kill gods, but the attitude of the game makes you feel far more like you're just one of many adventurers who got lucky along the path, and that the only reason you were able to succeed is either because of those you summoned to help you, or, as mentioned prior, you got lucky. This is because, in my opinion, unlike Dark Souls 1 and 3, I believe Dark Souls 2 was inherently designed to be a difficult game, not to have a devastating story or create a world of intrigue and wonder, but simply to make the player get annoyed. This is by no means a revelation, as many people have already talked quite a lot about this game and series, but I also wanted to talk about something I have not seen a lot of, which is why the hell are hollows different colours across the trilogy? Now, this is more than likely because the design team just felt different about it, or felt the colours fit the themes more. For example, Dark Souls 1, it's all about relinking the fire, and the closer and closer you get to this goal, the more fire you start seeing along the way. In Dark Souls 2, it focuses quite heavily on the undead curse itself, and one other very popular form of undead in media is zombies, which are more often than not depicted to be green. Then in Dark Souls 3, the story is about a dying world that you need to let go of. It's about allowing a world's cycles to continue, and the true good ending of the game is the Age of Darkness. Hence why the colours of this world are far more dull. But do the different colours of hollows actually mean anything outside of the overall message of the game? Or the answer is no. And if you thought I was about to start explaining how the pinkish red of Dark Souls 1's hollows represents the burning passion within man to still achieve our goals, irregardless of what obstacles face us, or how the green of the hollows in Dark Souls 2 represent inherent greed in the idea of pursuing these goals, as they do nothing but harm those around us, and how Dark Souls 3's more grey hollows represent how truly unfulfilled we feel once achieving these goals, after having no one left around us to appreciate our achievements with us. Because, to be quite frank, that's just wrong. Dark Souls never makes the player feel like they're being selfish for pursuing the goal. The whole point of the game, you're never really shamed for which ending you choose. The alternative ending of Dark Souls 2 is quite interesting, as it forgoes making a choice about rekindling the fire or snuffing it out, instead choosing to do nothing about it and letting someone else do it, if they should choose to. Instead, your character seeks to benefit all of humanity by trying to find a cure for the undead curse. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter which ending you choose in Dark Souls, as the world will most likely continue to be cruel, cold, and uncaring to those with compassion. And to circle back to the beginning of this video, the hollows are the perfect representation of this world's lack of caring for the weakest and most vulnerable. Hollows very rarely tend to be a strong enemy in Dark Souls. In fact, there's next to no hollow fights that could actually be considered much of a challenge, particularly when compared to later enemies of the games. They are the most encountered enemy throughout the entire trilogy, and in Dark Souls 3, not all of the hollows are even hostile towards you. Some are actually fearful of you, cowering when they notice you. Ultimately, hollows in Dark Souls are the weakest among all creatures, and given that you'll undoubtedly spend a substantial amount of time as a hollow in Dark Souls, it's quite fitting that ultimately the weakest among all those who live in this world should be allowed to choose what happens to it,